Step number 3, when the Fed does quantitative easing with the commercial banking system. This is where we start to get into the process most people would define as money printing. We all know what QE looks like. Editor, go ahead and throw up a clip. But is this process in and of itself inflationary? Is it creating more deposits in the real economy chasing goods and services? Let's answer that question right now. I wanted to be very specific and draw a line between the financial economy and the real economy. Because what we're concerned with when we think about money printing is whether or not it's going to create consumer price inflation. That's what most people are thinking about when they're trying to get their head around money printing. So I want there to be a defined line in the sand. This is the way I want you to think about it. And the bank really sits right in the middle. They kind of straddle. They've got one foot in the financial economy and one foot in the real economy. So their balance sheet is kind of split. The assets are in the financial economy, but the deposits, the liabilities, the fugazis, the IOUs are in the real economy because those represent the currency units that are available to chase the goods and services in the real economy, like cattle, corn, and maybe wheat, or whatever those things are. They're goods and services in the real economy, trust me. So when the Fed does QE with a bank, what happens is the bank sells them a treasury or a mortgage-backed security. In this case, we'll assume it's a treasury. Currently an asset on the bank's balance sheet. This treasury goes to the Fed, then it comes down, goes onto the Fed's balance sheet. So just to back up a little bit, we start with the Fed having one treasury and one bank reserve on their balance sheet. The treasury is an asset, the bank reserve is a liability. So again, they buy the treasury from the bank. That gives them an additional treasury. And then they print out of nowhere. They print, it's just really digits in a computer, electronic digits. They create more bank reserves to pay for the treasury they just bought from the bank. And where it gets really weird is this is just as much of a fugazi as this. But I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. So let's just focus on Fed quantitative easing in the banks right now. So what ends up happening when the transaction's done on the balance sheet of the bank is they started with bank reserves alone and treasuries. Now they have the bank reserves they started with, the same loan, but they have additional bank reserves that the Fed paid them for this treasury. So the treasury goes to the Fed, goes onto their balance sheet. They print up the funny money, give the bank more bank reserves. So the bank reserves now basically trade. That's why they call it an asset swap. They traded the treasury for additional bank reserves. But let's think this through. What did that do to the liabilities, the deposits in the commercial banking system? That's what we need to be concerned with. Did it increase the amount of currency units available to chase the goods and services? The answer is no, it didn't. The Fed could buy $2 quadrillion worth of mortgage-backed securities or treasuries from, or assets, even loans for that matter, from the banking system. And the only thing that would change is the balance sheet in the financial economy. The asset side of the bank's balance sheet and the liability side and the asset side of the Fed's balance sheet. It wouldn't directly affect the deposits in the commercial banking system or the amount of currency units available to chase the same amount of goods and services. In other words, this process in and of itself isn't necessarily inflationary. To give you an example of this, let's cut to a chart of M2 money supply. We know the Fed started quantitative easing in 2008. They did quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, quantitative easing 4, which was called not QE. They wouldn't admit to it. But if we can focus on the time frame between 2008 and say 2018, that 10 years, the Fed was doing quantitative easing with the banking system. But notice, M2 money supply really didn't spike. It just went up gradually. This is showing us that although the Fed took their balance sheet up to 4.5 trillion from 800 billion, meaning they created an additional $4 trillion almost worth of bank reserves, it didn't have a direct relationship with the number of currency units that were in the real economy chasing goods and services. This becomes clear when we compare a chart of M2 money supply with a chart of the Fed's balance sheet. Although they both go up, that's where the similarities end. And for those of you really paying attention, you'll notice M2 money supply does go parabolic in 2020. We'll address that in one of the future steps. For the next segment in this 7-part series, the last segment or the entire playlist, check out these links that are probably all around me, and I will see you on the next video.